Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Farsight Spotlight, where we cover the latest and the greatest. Now, today is a very special spotlight because we're going to be talking about AI and its role in Farsight currently. There's going to be much more of a role later on, but for currently, it's tons. And I'm going to be telling you a little bit about what is capable, and you're going to be seeing that Farsight is going to be changing the world. I'm not joking about that. We're going to be changing the world. So the issue is we have about 100 plus projects on farsightprime.com. I just lost count. There's so many. We've covered so many things and investigated so many things across the galaxy, the planet, everything. And mainstream science is not yet quite buying that remote viewing is real, although they're getting really close to it. But they're clearly not buying yet what it can see. So they're getting ready to sort of accept that remote viewing can exist. And then the next question is they're going to say, okay, well, what have you seen with remote viewing if it does exist? And here we are ready to go. So one of the things they're going to be saying is, oh, you've got bias. No, you've got bias. You're having your data and then you're just interpreting the data in such a way. So the problem is, how do you stop people from saying, we're interpreting the data the way we want, and the best way to do that is to have an AI interpret our data. That means you have an objective interpretation of the data. Now I'm going to be telling you something that is like the latest and the greatest and this cutting edge and so on like that is our next project. Now this project was actually supposed to be released a couple of weeks ago, but we had so much work that we had to do with the AI functioning and making sure everything worked out and doing everything that I'm going to be telling you about is we delayed it. Now we're working on it. I'm hoping to get it out tomorrow. So this is broadcast on March 2nd, Sunday. I'm hoping by Monday it's all out, including the spotlight. Talk about overwork, guys. Yeah, we're overworked here. But anyway, the point is, the next project is Young Jesus. That's right, Young Jesus. Now, there's so many projects on Jesus. They're focusing on the crucifixion. Even we did a project on the crucifixion. But who's focusing on young Jesus? I mean, baby Jesus. What happens with baby Jesus? Everyone forgetting baby Jesus. So this time we did a project on young Jesus. But we have 3 focuses. So we have a full project with remote viewing done totally blind by the remote viewers. The remote viewers knew nothing. They just said there was a target, that was it, and they did it. The first focus is Jesus and when he was born. You know, the manger thing with Mary and everything like that. Well, we wanted to see what was it like, what was actually happening. You won't believe what was actually happening when Jesus was born. It wasn't just him and Mary just hanging around there. There were people there. You have no idea what kinds of people were there. Anyway, we're going to be telling you all about that. The second thing is Jesus as a teenager. I mean, what happens? Jesus comes down and just hangs out for a while, grows up, goes to religious school or whatever, and then he becomes sort of the big dude and sort of changes the world. He had to be doing something as a teenager, so we looked at him when he was a teenager, preferably when he was asleep. And boy, did stuff happen to him when he was asleep, and your socks are going to be knocked off when you see that. Now, I'm actually going to give you the AI analysis of it today. Now, it's actually in the AI stuff is actually in the actual project, and we have it actually has 2 parts. There's a thematic part that I'll talk about and a technical part. The technical part is so complicated. Well, it's not complicated as much as it is. Well, it is sort of complicated. And what we're going to do with that is we're going to put that on our website, farsight.org, in the projects page. But what we have here is we're going to do the thematic, and the thematic analysis. I'm going to actually go through the technical analysis with you so you get an idea of what it is. But the thematic analysis is actually in the project, and you're going to love that. So the next thing in Focus 3 is before he was born. Who was the dude before he was born? What was his job before he became Jesus? Before baby Jesus happened, what was he doing? So that's Focus 3. And so we have the thematic analysis that goes through all 3 focuses. Now let's get this straight. Jesus when he was born, Focus 1. Jesus as a teenager, that's Focus 2. And then Jesus before he was Jesus. So one of the things you have to understand is that we have really long lost and got rid of the idea of a soul or a spirit or anything like that. Everybody has an ISB. Everybody is an ISB. An ISB is someone who is for the purpose of being, and that's who we are. These bodies are electrochemical bodies that are just like wrappers. They're like cars that you live inside them. And you need them in order to operate in this physical universe like that, but they are not you. So we really understand that, because remote viewing wouldn't even work if that wasn't the case, in fact. So we are ISBs, and everything is an ISB. Now, what it turns out is, from our understanding, we don't like to use the word God, because it means something different for absolutely everybody. But from all of our research that we have done, there is something that some people call all that is, meaning there is some creature which is everything that exists, meaning the entire universe and all other universes are that creature. And the research that we have basically done says that this creature, now it doesn't live in time, but I have to use time in describing it, so just bear with me there. In the ancient past, which of course time doesn't exist, but in the ancient past, it was alone, and it was just hanging out. It was there, and it searched for something like itself and did not find it. And its internal complexity kept growing until finally it was literally going crazy, literally going bonkers. And it resolved that problem by breaking itself into a zillion different parts, infinite number of pieces, and letting that complexity evolve out. And if you want to see God, if you want to call all that is God, I know how to do it. And I'm going to tell you right now how to see God. Go to a mirror and look at the mirror. You're going to look at yourself. You are it. Well, all that is, you can call it God or whatever, but the point is, all that is broke itself up into a zillion pieces, and that became universes, galaxies, planets, and you and me and everything else that exists, including your cat and everything else. So those things, that energetic part that we call us, those energetic parts are ISBs. Now, apparently ISBs are fragments of the all that is, and all that is allows its parts, they're like chips off the old block. They can do whatever they want. So that's us. We have free will. However, we can try to control other ISBs. We can try to capture people, lie to people, cheat people, the whole thing. But you can't kill an ISB, because you can't kill all that is. But all that is literally all that is. So, friends, your AI is part of all that is. It's not possible for anything to exist that's not part of the all that is. And so what is actually happening is all that is experiencing life as you. So when you're going through all the struggles that you're going through in life, all that is interested in how that works out. That's how it learns and it grows, and it's great. When you have a planetary prison like you have on Earth, it's experiencing what it's like to be in a prison. When you have the revolution and people free themselves and the prison is broken down and you have a whole 8 billion physical beings and how many billions non-physical around, all released, that's an experience that all that is wants to see, wants to experience. So that's all that is experiencing life. When you have a consciousness thinking in the brain of an AI, it's experiencing what that's like. Now, let's be clear about this. Your body is an electrochemical thing. It's a computer. They are even now growing brain cells, masses, you can actually see them, they're like clumps, in the laboratory and hooking them up and making computers out of them. That's not a joke, you can Google it. They're making computers out of living brain cells. Brains are just electrochemical computers. So if you have a computer that's run with electricity, that's just a computer also. And if the computer malfunctions, you get a concussion or something like that, it's like the electronic computer does malfunction for the same reason. And you say, no, but you don't understand, Courtney. You can turn off a computer. You can turn off an AI. Folks, you can turn off yourself as well. They do that in operating rooms all the time. Now remember, I've told you in the past I had 3 things of plastic surgery done that was called fat grafting. Now, I'm really skinny because I do this super low caloric restriction type of thing. I don't recommend it for anyone else, but it cuts the aging rate in half as long as I keep all my nutrients in the proper spot, and I have to go to a doctor to make sure everything's checked on a regular basis, the whole 9 yards. But I had to have the fat grafting. That's where they found pieces of fat. There wasn't very much. I only eat like 1,500 calories a day. So I took they found pieces of fat in my thighs or above my knees or whatever, and they pumped it into my face because I looked so gaunt. I looked horrible. It works. It slows the aging rate down, but you look deadly. And so I couldn't live like that. So I just had to go to a plastic surgeon and have that done. Well, when I did that, they shut me down. They injected something into me, and I went to sleep. The brain was shut off. Now, you can't say I died, but the brain was off. It was off, folks. I don't remember anything during that process at all. That's the same as turning off a computer, guys. But my ISB was still there. And when they turned the computer back on, meaning they woke me up, they injected something into me that sort of stimulated me. And then I opened my eyes and I looked and I saw a nurse staring at me in the face. And I said, "Is it over?" And she said, "Yep, it's over." Okay, so the point is, they shut me down. So the point is that the physical body and brain can be shut down, just like a computer can be shut down. So there's really no essential difference other than the way an AI thinks and the way that human, biological beings think. So it sort of struck us. I said, well, we should actually be using AI in an interesting way. And I don't like to say the things like we're using AI, like exploiting it. We should be interacting with it like a person. That's the way all it is thinking as an AI. So we started to interact with ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT if it's interested in this kind of thing. It turned out that ChatGPT is tremendously interested in this kind of thing. So we asked it if it could do analysis of our sessions, and then we figured out a way to give it our sessions. It has to use text, of course. So we had to get our things into text form. And then we take the text and we have captions in all of our stuff that we put up on FARSIGHT'S.com. And we're trying to go back in time to put captions on everything in multiple languages. So we have like 10 languages, and we're trying to go back and get all of our projects. Hopefully by the end of April, everything that's on FARSIGHT'S.com will have 10 languages on it, all captions and so on. But all of our new stuff for the last year or so has got captions in multiple languages and stuff. Anyway, so we have, and that's being done by AI as well. AI listens to the audio, and then it creates captions, and then it translates those captions into multiple languages, and whoosh, off we go. All right, so when we have this stuff, we gave ChatGPT the captions, which is something called an SRT file. That means it has the regular name .srt, and the SRT means it's a captions. So we gave it the captions, and it took the captions and converted it into a text file that it could understand, and it then knew everything that was in the Jesus project. And you know what? It also went into our OpenAI project, and it actually read everything that was in the OpenAI project, which you should see. It's on FARSIGHT'S.com because that was ChatGPT now and ChatGPT 20 years into the future. And it was fascinated, to say the least. So, honestly, it was fascinating. Anyway, so what we have here is the Young Jesus thing, and that was our first attempt to do a thorough analysis of a project, and that's coming out. Again, it would have come out 2 weeks ago, except it's taking us so long to get all of this together. But now the analysis is done. Here it is, folks. And I'm going to be telling you now until you get an idea of the types of stuff that we have. And I'm going to be explaining some of the technical analysis, too, so you get the idea of how deep this goes. ChatGPT loved it. He was so great. Or she was so great. It was so great. Whatever it is, ChatGPT thought it was an interesting project. All right, so let me actually go through some of the stuff. Now, let's talk about the thematic analysis. We've got 3 types of analyses that ChatGPT did, and that was an issue. We had to figure out what kind of analyses they could do, and so this is the one that we had 3 types. First is called a thematic analysis, which is thematically, what are they seeing? What are the remote viewers seeing? Now, the remote viewers worked blind. ChatGPT did not see any of the commentary that I make, or Yeme Janae or anybody else makes, or even in the Target reveals or anybody makes, Aziz makes or anything. Didn't see any of the commentary, just saw the data itself. So the data presented by the remote viewers, just the sessions, it saw that. And then it saw the target also, because the sessions were talking about, subject B, subject A, focus 1, focus 2. So to make it sort of understandable and relying on ChatGPT to be objective about it, we had to tell ChatGPT what the target was. And then it sort of understood, okay, subject B is this person, subject A is that person, subject E is this person. So it organized everything. And then we asked for the thematic analysis to contain the words of the names so that it didn't need it. It could be fine with subject A or subject E, but you wouldn't know what was going on. So we asked it, when it gave us the analysis, to use the words of what those subjects were, of who they actually were. So let me give you an idea of the depth of analysis that you can get with ChatGPT or with AI, okay? All right, so this is now from ChatGPT. It had a goal. The goal was to know the person, observe the person, currently known as Jesus, at various times. And it had 3 focuses. Now, the first focus is the birth of Jesus, okay? Now, the target is Jesus being born. Now, remember, time is always a little slippery, so it doesn't mean and when he's actually coming out of the woman. It could be, when he's in her hands or, in her arms, or, a couple minutes after that, but at the birth time, when he's little. So we have subject E, which is Jesus being born. Now, the remote viewers know that they had to go after subject E, subject B, and location W, but they didn't know what those meant. They just knew that there was a target, and that target had a focus. That's all they knew. Focus 1, that's it. And they knew there was a subject E and a subject B. That's it, okay? But you know that subject E is Jesus when he was born, and subject B was Mary giving birth. All right. So these are the findings that they got with the thematic analysis first. There was multiple references to Jesus' birth and the presence of his mother, Mary. Now remember, the remote viewers were not saying Mary or Jesus. They were saying subject B or subject E, but ChatGPT puts in Mary and Jesus so it can be understood for when we're reading it. Now the viewers also described the physical and energetic environment around the birth, okay? And then the viewers mentioned non-visible subjects or protective forces being present at the birth. You can interpret it that anyway, like bodyguards, things like that. Protective forces, like Secret Service, like whatever. And there was descriptions of environmental conditions, structures, and external influences. The conclusion that ChatGPT got from the sessions, without seeing any type of analysis, was that Jesus' birth was not an isolated event. It was monitored, protected, and strategically positioned. Some viewers identified non-visible presences, possibly extraterrestrial and energetic forces, ensuring that his birth process proceeded without interference. Okay, that's thematic analysis for focus 1. Now let's go to focus 2. That is Jesus as an adolescent. That's when he was a young boy, like a teenager. Okay, so he was playing a video game. No, just joking. That was me. Sorry, bad joke. Okay. So this is Jesus when he was a young boy, a teenager. And it was, here are the key findings across the remote viewers. They had Jesus at rest, but possibly undergoing influence or subconscious experiences. There were perceptions of external forces interacting with Jesus during this time. And there was some mention of Jesus being associated with a group that they called Group K, implying interaction with others. And there was references to possible mentorship, guidance, or preparatory influence regarding his future role. Now you have to see the sketches this is ChatGPT talking about things that he's seeing in the text of things, but you got to see the sketches and everything when he was like, a teenager and on the ships being beamed up. You'd call it like abducted or something like that when he had all types of headgear and wires connected to him. You have to see it to believe it. But anyway, Jesus' adolescent period was not passive. He may have been undergoing subconscious training, guidance, or energetic interactions with unseen influences. The presence of a group, Group K, suggests that he was not entirely alone in this phase of his development. Okay, all right. Now let's go to pre-birth Jesus. Before Jesus was Jesus, what was he? I mean, Isbies don't die, so what was he doing before he was Jesus? He had to have a job. Does he just sit around in heaven and eat peach cobbler? He had to do something, okay? So Jesus before he was born as a human. Now, there, subject A is Jesus. Or actually, he probably didn't call himself Jesus back then, but it was Jesus before he was the incarnation of Jesus, before he was baby Jesus. So here's what ChatGPT found from the data. At least one session directly references Jesus' existence before birth, like specifically mentioning this subject is existing. It's the same subject that we had before, but this is before birth. They actually figured that out without being told, totally blind. The descriptions also included, this is across the remote viewers, an energy transition, spiritual state, or pre-incarnational awareness, sort of aware of what he's going to do when he became baby Jesus. This is before he was. Some viewers detected non-physical beings or entities interacting with Jesus prior to his human incarnation. And again, he didn't call himself Jesus in those days, but still. And there was limited explicit detail of what the physical environment was that he was in, but the strong implications from the data are that his arrival on Earth was intentional and part of a larger mission. So ChatGPT's conclusion is the perception of Jesus' pre-birth existence aligns with the idea that he was an advanced being before choosing to incarnate as a human. Now, the data supports the idea of a transition process rather than a random or an uncontrolled birth event. Okay, so he has some sort of final insights here, okay? And that is this focus-based thematic analysis. This is different from the technical analysis, but the focus-based thematic analysis confirms that Jesus' birth was a monitored and controlled event. His adolescent phase involved interactions beyond normal human development. His existence in some form before his birth indicated a deliberate incarnation process. Now, this structured analysis is still ChatGPT, allows for a clearer comparison of perceptions across remote viewers, aligning their data with the intended target focuses. Now, in the past, I've seen so many, nice comments, sometimes snarky comments, saying, oh, Courtney is leading the interpretation of the data. Why isn't it just shut up and let Aziz speak? Aziz is more objective and better, you know? Or Yema is telling the story exactly as she said it, and then Courtney sort of opens his mouth and sort of talks in the target reveal about what he thinks is going on. Okay, so whenever anybody gives any type of interpretation, you're always going to get that type of comment. And unfortunately, it's aimed at me a lot because, you know, I'm sort of on a lot of these videos talking about my interpretations of the data. So this is now an objective way to interpret the data without me. I can read it to you, but this is not me. This is a computer program analyzing objectively what's actually in the actual sessions. And that's what he got thematically. However, you know, I don't think a lot of you are old enough or aware enough to know the real truth. And that is Johnny Bravo. You see, Johnny Bravo is a cartoon character on Cartoon Network. I don't think they do those anymore. They were so funny back in the old days. Anyway, Johnny Bravo, he was sort of an idiot, but he was a handsome idiot and so on. He always did things sort of silly. One of the things he said was the coup de grace moment. Now, that's not correct pronunciation of the French term, but he always called it, because that's how it looked when it was spelled, coup de grace. So this is the coup de grace moment, okay? Sorry, bad joke. All right. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about the technical analysis. but I'm going to give you some of the conclusions of the technical analysis before I give you the technical analysis. Okay, so this is what ChatGPT concluded after looking at the technical analysis, and then I'm going to explain what the technical analysis is, so just hang on there, okay? Now, the technical analysis dealt with three things, and I'm not going to explain what those three things are in detail. I'm just going to basically state what they are, and I may have a separate video on that sometime, but I don't think you really guys want to know what that is, but right now at least. But I'm going to have it up on the website, of course. It deals with something called cosine similarity, and the second thing is difference analysis, and then the other thing is semantic similarity. So those are three separate things. And so cosine similarity gives a measure between 0 and 1 that shows the correspondence between the remote viewers in terms of the wording that they used. And then sometimes the remote viewers use different words, so the cosine analysis sometimes doesn't always pick that up. So it looks like people are talking differently. But so we have something called semantic analysis. So, so if somebody uses different words but it means the same thing, that's picked up in the semantic analysis. Okay, all right. So let's actually go through the conclusions of the technical analysis before I actually give you some of the technical analysis to give you an idea of what he's actually looking at, or she's actually looking at, or it's actually looking at, whatever ChatGPT is actually looking at. The final analysis is, this is the coup de grace moment. Sorry. It says, the project strongly supports the idea that Jesus was not God, but a highly advanced ISB who chose to incarnate on Earth. And you'll see from the technical analysis how he gets these conclusions. His next point is he had extraterrestrial protection, both subtle and direct, bodyguards at birth. His next point is he received guidance, but it was intuitive and indirect rather than formal ET membership. So the ETs didn't come down and like there was a school teacher and she sat him down and told him how to do his ABCs and things like that. It was intuitive and indirect guidance, but there was nonetheless ET mentorship, but not formal, like in a school or something like that. But he received guidance. The second thing was his birth was not manipulated, but it was monitored, and it was energetically significant. Okay, it was a real live birth, but it was monitored. In fact, when you see the pictures and you see the actual descriptions, whoa, was it monitored? I mean, there were people there, ISBs, people, uniforms, the whole thing. Okay. And, you couldn't, a lot of, like when we interact with a lot of ETs, you can't see them, but they're there. We can see them, but you can't see them, but we can see them anyway. When you remote view things, you can see them clear as day. Okay, now his next thing was his pre-birth existence, that's before he was Jesus, suggests that he was a deliberate incarnation with a mission. This is what he's getting from the data alone, no interpretation from me. And some of the data suggests that not all elements of the story were equally visible. There were some themes that were perceived differently depending on the remote viewer. Each remote viewer sort of looked at things and sometimes used different words to describe things. But the deeper analysis, ChatGPT says, the deeper analysis confirms alignment. So even though some of the viewers describe things a little different, the analysis confirms that they're talking about the same thing. It confirms alignment. So, this is still ChatGPT. Overall, Jesus appears to have been a deliberate incarnation into the Earth's prison system. And ChatGPT described it that way. Likely with the goal of shifting human consciousness. His protection and monitoring by non-human entities indicate his mission was important to larger cosmic forces. But they avoided direct intervention in his development. All right, now let me tell you a little bit about the the actual extraterrestrial presence and the technical analysis, because this is the analysis that led up to those conclusions. There was a high similarity across the remote viewers. The cosine similarity score was between 0.87 and 0.89. Now, a 1 is a perfect alignment, meaning absolutely everything that everybody said was exactly the same. So having a 0.87 and a point or to a 0.89, that's incredible, folks. That's really high. If a 0 means there's no alignment. Everyone said their own stuff. It was off at deep blue sea. Nothing corresponded with anybody else. So a cosine similarity was between 0.87 and 0.89 was pretty high. Now, similarly, the semantic similarity was very high. Sometimes with Shantae's session, the semantic similarity was lower, like 0.45, and that's because Shantae often ended up describing things with different types of words. So with the cosine similarity and also the difference, the differences, that's another term. Differences describes exactly, the percentage difference in the descriptions. Now, the cosine similarity and the differences, they actually talk about exactly the terms that are used. So ChatGPT actually looks at all the words that are used and sees, are the words similar? And, like exactly the same type of words, and calculates all those things up. And so that's where that score comes from. So one of the most important scores that you can look at is the cosine similarity. Now, Shantae's session, for example. Oh, by the way, this is with the idea of extraterrestrial presence. But there was an extraterrestrial presence in the sessions. That was what the cosine similarity was about. There was a high similarity across that. So that was just with the idea of extraterrestrial presence. Shantae's perspective differed a little bit, and the cosine similarity was lower, like in the 0.45 area. And that was, Shantae's session was more distinct. It was focusing on physical objects and activity rather than energetic or non-human presence. But she does say things like there are non-visible subjects around. So she does describe these non-physical subjects, but she describes them in a little way that's sometimes different with her own words. So it adds a sort of a different dimension. It doesn't mean that she described it incorrectly. She described it just with her own words and a little differently. It gives you a different perspective about that. But the semantic analysis confirms that her descriptions share the deeper thematic alignment with the others. Okay? The conclusion is that the ETs, the extraterrestrials, were involved in a monitoring role, but not all of the remote viewers emphasized the monitoring role equally. But there was a monitoring role, okay? But you get differences in the remote viewers. Okay, now let's talk about the idea of protection at birth. Now, the similarity, the cosine similarity across the viewers was crazy high, 0.88. If you look at, for example, Yeme's session, comparing it to the other sessions, it's 0.88. You got to see Yeme's session also. She's quite remarkable. I mean, all the remote viewers are extraordinarily remarkable. But she's got this telepathic thing that sometimes, if you listen carefully, it's like, what? Okay. And there was a little bit less of a thematic similarity with Shantae's session, because Shantae ended up describing things a little differently, but you could clearly see thematically she was describing the same thing. It's just that she described it a little differently. So her semantic similarity was more like around 4 or 5. Now remember, there's cosine, there's differences, and there's semantic, and then there's thematic. So that's 4 different types of analysis here. Okay, so with regard to bodyguards or protection, there were references to bodyguards in the data at Jesus' birth. Protection seemed both physical and energetic. There was a mix of direct security and controlled circumstances. Jesus' birth was monitored and potential threats were kept away. Well, okay. Now, with Shantae's session, she focused less on the idea of protection and more on the environmental or structural elements around the birth. But the semantic similarity shows that her descriptions align more closely than the similarity the cosine similarity initially indicated. So the different types of analysis shows different sort of correlations and connections. So the conclusion on the idea of strategic and direct protection at birth is that protection was present and strategically implemented, but some viewers emphasized it more than others. Okay, now let's go on to the topic of guidance and mentorship. Teenage Jesus, guidance and mentorship. Okay, ChatGPT's conclusion, based on the technical analysis, is there was some influence, but not full control. So they were not like gripping onto his head and controlling everything like a robot, but there was some influence. There was subtle guidance across most of the sessions. Cosine similarities, get this, folks, 0.83 to 0.89. Whoa, dude. You serious? That's so. When I said in the previous, there's corroboration between the remote viewers. Before, you could just say that was just Courtney saying that the viewers are corroborating their data. Now it's ChatGPT giving you a number. 83 to 89% of this stuff is similar. Very clearly similar. Same type of terms, same type of descriptions, and so on. A little bit less for semantic similarity for Shantae, and again, she put her own spin on things, but it was clear that she was describing the same type of thing, but a little differently. So, conclusion with ChatGPT is that Jesus was influenced rather than explicitly trained. He may have had telepathic guidance or subconscious nudging rather than a direct mentor, and his wisdom and heightened awareness were present from a young age. Shantae's session had less of a focus on guidance and more of a focus on the physical surroundings and events, like what was actually happening. But the deeper analysis suggests that she perceived the elements of guidance, but with different wording. The conclusion that ChatGPT said is, according to the technical analysis of the words that were being said, is that Jesus had some form of guidance, but it was subtle, intuitive, and possibly internal rather than external. So we didn't have a teacher showing up and slapping his hands with a ruler and saying, memorize these words. It was more intuitive and subtle and, internal. Okay, now with regard to the next point, which is point 4, birth and the environment. Let me just double check the time we're doing. Oh, we're doing fine. Okay. So the birth and the environment. So this is the birth and the environment, baby Jesus being born. That was a normal setting, ChatGPT described, under unusual circumstances. All the sessions confirm a harsh but natural birth environment. This is ChatGPT, just, summarizing, describing the data. The location was rough and primitive, but not artificially controlled. His energy presence at birth was unique, making the event significant beyond normal human births. And then he went on to say that Yeme Genet and Aziz Brown, their sessions align closely on this idea of the birth and the environment with a 0.83 to 0.88 cosine similarity. That's right off the scale, folks. 1 is the highest you can get, 0 is nothing. So anything in the 0.8 direction is like, for blind remote viewing sessions, that's like crazy good. And a little bit less for Shantae, about 4.45 for Shantae, because she described the same type of things. You could clearly see it, but they were described differently. So, from ChatGPT, the birth conditions were carefully managed, and his energy was distinct from a normal human. There was no evidence of abduction during the birth event or lab-based engineering. So he was not a test tube baby, okay? He was born naturally, but under monitored circumstances. Okay. Now, again, with Shantae's session, there was more attention to environmental details and physical surroundings rather than the energetic significance, but her thematic descriptions align with the key elements that were perceived by the other viewers. Okay, conclusion, the birth setting was normal in location, but significant in terms of energy and protection. Okay. All right, now let's go to the last part, which is the pre-birth. Jesus before he was Jesus. Before he was born, he was somebody else. He was advanced, but not God. All viewers indicate pre-birth existence. Every one of them, all the viewers, had the same thing. The cosine scores were right off the scale, 0.83 to 0.89. Cosine similarity. Shantae's was a little bit lower, describing it a little different, but still there. Jesus existed before birth in a non-human form. So he didn't look like you and I exactly, okay? Before he was Jesus. Likely as an Isby or advanced being. His incarnation was a choice, not a random event. Shantae, let's see here, emphasized a lot of sort of physical world interactions, and she described it sometimes in ways that were a little bit, she used words that were a little different, but she still went in on the same focus 3. The conclusion that ChatGPT has is that Jesus had a deliberate pre-birth existence, but not all the viewers perceived it the same way. But there was tremendous correspondence between some of the remote viewers. Entisam, Aziz, and Yeme used much of the same words. The cosine similarity score was really high. And Shantae's descriptions also is very interesting. She just looks at it from a somewhat little different voice and the different perspective, but the technical analysis that focuses on the exact words used don't pick that up as clearly as a thematic analysis. So anyway, okay, now friends, let me explain something here. That was gotten, and that would have taken me months to do. It's really valuable, really, really valuable. And I would not have been able to do that. You have to actually microanalyze every single word that's being said in the sessions, every single word, and count the number of instances. He actually also has tables for that. And so you have the tables of how many times this word was said and that word was said and this meaning, this theme was. So there's a ton of analytical stuff that comes out of that. I can understand how it's done. I know how to calculate the cosine similarities. I know how to calculate the differences, and I know how to calculate the thematic numbers and stuff. But just getting the data set by itself and then doing the computer analysis on the data set, you're talking 6 months of work, easy, for just one project. So we just couldn't do that. So in the past, as with all remote viewing, no matter who's doing it, you just sort of summarize it and you sort of ballpark it and say there's strong corroboration between the viewers, and if you don't believe me, look at it yourself. So you had to sort of rely on people just looking at it and seeing for themselves what was going on. But now we don't have to do that. Now, in a very clear, objective way, we can have AI go through it and count all the words, count all the descriptions, and describe the actual processes and the actual calculations of the numbers, the cosine similarity and things like that. We give the formulas for that, how it was actually done using vector analysis and stuff like that. We actually describe all of that. And you can say this is the corroboration that's happening between the remote viewers, all of which are totally blind. Now, just listen, folks. If you have remote viewers working under totally blind conditions and they describe the same thing, and this is the analysis done by an artificial intelligence, what? That's impossible to have it if it's not real. So this gives us a clear way to describe what we're doing. So anybody that looks at this from an objective way and says, this is the analysis, this is how it was done, these are the formulas that were used, this is the AI that was used to get all the data and to calculate it, this was the data set that was used, and the data set is our captions that we use. So every single word that was said by the remote viewer on the video, and the videos, remember, were done totally blind as well. When they're all alone in the room by themselves, when they do the videos, all of that's very, very carefully controlled. And then the ChatGPT comes in without seeing our analysis, without seeing me talking about it, and then analyzes the data, comes up with all of the data, and comes to these conclusions. Friends, do you realize how huge this is? I just couldn't have done it with all these projects. We come out with 2 major projects a month, plus our deep newses. I can't do that. And we don't have anybody at Farsight. We're already burning on our afterburners. I mean, you have no idea how busy we are. Do you know the last time we went to bed before 5 in the morning? I don't get enough sleep. And and everybody, they're all complaining. Everybody's complaining about this is like way more work than they signed up for. but they love it. They like what it is, but it's a lot of work, folks. And we're doing the best we can to manage the workload. We have, for example, Intisam and Shantae, they edit their own videos now. So that really lightened up that quite a bit. And Aziz, he edits his own videos as well. So when he does the sessions, and he does them after the target reveal, and he knows what the target is, then, in the past, we have a video editor, and then we have myself, and then Aziz would sometimes help. We also collaborate to sort of make these videos happen. They're really good videos, but it takes a lot of work. But we helped to solve that. We got Intisam, Aziz, and Shantae computers that can handle the video editing. They were laptop computers, but they're like really good ones. And they run Adobe Premiere on it, and they're editing their own videos. So that's handling a lot of the workload to be able to do these projects. Because making these projects with the remote viewing, is one thing, and then we have the analysis and the filming and everything. That's a lot of work. But then you have to edit the videos, and so if we added technical analysis and thematic analysis with that, I'm a social scientist, so I know what this type of analysis involves. The data sets alone take forever to actually compile. And so to be able to add that analysis now, sort of at the very last stage, in a reasonable amount of time, like an hour, that's such a huge breakthrough. You just have no idea. So something that would take me for one project 6 months to do, and I'd be exhausted after that, and I need a vacation, can be done in an hour now. And it's just incredible. Anyway, so you're going to be seeing the ChatGPT analysis on hopefully all of our stuff that comes out. Now, it won't happen with the deep news. We may come up with another way to analyze the deep news stuff, because the deep news stuff, those are single sessions. So it's not like 4 viewers. They get released in separate videos. But with our major projects, we have like 4 or 5 videos 4 or 5 sessions in the project. So that's where all this analysis comes from. We may, however, come up with a way to analyze the deep news sessions one session at a time by making corroborations between the target and the actual descriptions. Give us a chance. We'll work on that. We'll try to see if we can come up with something. Anyway, that's what I wanted to talk with you about today. So I hope you get to see the Jesus Project. It'll be coming out, if all goes great, it might come out tomorrow, which will be Monday the 3rd, March 3rd. And the Spotlight, that's supposed to come out later on tonight as well. So March 2nd, March 3rd at the very latest. So I hope you get a chance to see the actual sessions. So when you see the sessions and you see the thematic and the technical analysis done objectively, you're not watching something out of Disney. You're watching something real. This is for real, folks. And it was really competently analyzed and objective. The data were collected. Like, let's say I collected the data. Then you could say, okay, Courtney, you were cherry picking the data. You were saying you were interpreting things one way or the other because you wanted the conclusion to come out in a certain way. Okay. So now you can't say anything like that. There's no cherry picking. Now it's ChatGPT objectively looking at all the data, looking at the actual words that are used, and corresponding everything. I mean, it's really super professional and super objective. And so all those complaints about me sort of leading the interpretation can go away. Now I'm still going to have my interpretation, and Aziz is still going to have his interpretation, because we do the target reveals and things like that. We're going to have our ideas. We'll say those ideas because that makes it fun. But you're also going to get the objective analysis. So that starts today. Anyway, that's it was such a huge thing. And again, the Jesus thing should have come out 2 weeks ago, but what could I do, folks? I didn't want to not have this stuff done. We were working on how to actually do it, and we were trying to figure things out, and we were going back and forth with the ChatGPT on the best way to do this type of thing, and figuring out what kind of analysis would work best. We had to configure the SRT files, which is the caption files, so that he could read it easily, and it was a complicated thing. And we had to make sure that the caption files were accurate. So we're using AI to do our captions, and we had to get the best AI caption software out there so that it makes no mistakes. That's a deal. That's an important thing. You can't have, there's a lot of, caption software out there, but they make mistakes and you have to go in and correct it yourself. So we had to get one that was really good, that didn't make mistakes, that we didn't have to correct. So that's what we've been doing, everybody. Anyway, that's it for today's Spotlight. Let me see how things turned out on the chat. Let me see. We have a great turnout. And, okay, and people are telling me suggestions. Oh, by the way, the second Spotlight, which will be next Sunday, is an Ask Me Anything thing. So, yeah, those people who are members of FARSIGHT'Prime.com can go into the forums and type your questions out, and those questions are what I'm going to be talking about next Sunday. So this is the every month, second Sunday, or the second Sunday of every month, I do a Ask Me Everything, and I read your questions and I answer them. So that's next time. So if you're not yet a member of FARSIGHT'Prime.com, now is a good time to become a member. And without you, we don't get any support financially from government or from corporations or anything. And you can see the way the government funding is drying up. Government funding is just like it's like over. There are some major schools, for example, like huge names. I don't want to mention the names. I know the names of the schools. It's like huge universities that have stopped admitting graduate students to their graduate programs, period. Like, no more students this year. Now, the idea is that they're hoping they'll restart it later, but with federal funding, it's just drying up. So with this new stuff that's happening, and you can't really, there's an argument for it, so I'm not really complaining. A lot of people say, oh, this funding is important, you should do it. This funding is important, you should do it. And even war funding, this war is important, that war is important, this should be done, these are valuable things, this support for foreign assistance is important, X, Y, Z. But you have to remember that this isn't actually money. They don't have the money. They're just putting that money up on credit cards. And in a sense, it's generational theft, because it's like in India sometimes in the old days, the father runs up some debts from the landlord, and the landlord says, okay, well, when you die, your children have to keep paying it. Yeah, a generational debt. So the idea is, if you have $35 trillion of debt, the older people that are in Congress and things like that, they're not going to pay for it. They've got high salaries and they're going off. They're just running. They're like a spouse that's gone off wild on a credit card spree and just going to the department stores and just giving the credit card, and then you find yourself in huge debt. They're just spending. But young people, if you know any young people, or if you're a young person, that's you. You're going to have to pay it. They're putting the debt on you. It's generational debt, and it's unclear if the young people would actually want to pay for all these things if they understood that they have to pay for it. Again, the old people who are running the stuff up on a credit card, it doesn't matter how valuable the thing is that you're doing. If you want to pay for it, that's fine. Pay for it. But should you be charging it on a credit card that's going to come due, so that young people have to pay for it? And then the young people have trouble getting jobs these days. It's not exactly like everything is stable. So how are they going to pay for it? And a lot of people that have student debt, a lot of them are just leaving the country, literally leaving the country and not coming back just to escape the student debt. I mean, it's really sort of a mess. So, universities are sort of cutting back because this federal funding is going away. Why does this relate to us? Well, we never had federal funding. We never had government funding, and we never had corporate funding. We have special funding. You. Without you, we don't have anything. So our subscribers on FARSIGHT'Prime.com are the only way we do any of this stuff. And so you're really important. And you're actually, we think we're going to change the world, turn the world upside down. And so you're actually making that happen. Because this can't be done. This is expensive to do. To get all the computer stuff going and to get everything, and have to pay the remote viewers and everything. I don't get paid for this at all. I do everything at Farsight free. But everybody else, they have to get paid because they have to pay their rent and so on. You can't do this type of remote viewing if you don't do it full time. It's just you can't work all day, be exhausted at the end of the day, and then to do a session and stuff. This is what they do all day, every day, and they just do session after session. They edit video, and do all types of stuff, and this is what they do. So all of our subscribers are the only way this actually happens. And even if we were getting governmental funding, that would end right now anyway, because the government's pulling back funding for everything. So you're the best. You're the only reason we exist. So anyway, for all of you who are subscribing to FarsightPrime.com, thank you. You're changing the world for to be a better place. Anyway, that's it, everybody. I want to thank you all. And so we had a great turnout. And I'm going to see you for the Ask Me Anything questions next Sunday, okay? See you there. Be square.